Very good. It's 10 o'clock, and so we will begin our orientation of the new Liquor Control Board. First, I'd like to say to the new members, congratulations and thank you for your service. Thank you for volunteering. What I just said was true. I'm not sure you know what you're getting yourselves into. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a great experience, and thank you. And with that, we will start with Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much to all of you for your time and your service to the city. We appreciate it a great deal. So thank you for stepping forward to be considered for this important position. As we get ready to launch into this new look Liquor Control Board, we really thought a training session would be a good opportunity for you to ask questions, for you to get to know our staff, and to also get to know our city attorney's office in a bit greater detail. And we want you to be comfortable, certainly in this venue, in this format, to ask us any questions that come up during the course of the morning here. We know that this is going to be a lot of information coming at you in a 1 hour period of time, but if there is at any time additional questions you'd like to follow up on, we're happy to do that. We're here to serve you. We're here to help you. We want this to be a successful thing for you. So thank you sincerely on behalf of the commissioners for doing this. We very much appreciate your time. So with that, I will just have very briefly our staff introduce themselves back here, and then perhaps we'll turn it back to the chair, and he can introduce and have you folks introduce yourselves as well. So we'll just start down here at the end with the city auditor. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Steve Sprague. I'm the city auditor. I've been in this position for a little over 20 years. So I've got a little bit of history behind me. And hopefully any questions that you have, I'll be able to answer. If I can't answer it on the spot, then I'll do the research that we need to find out, what it is that you need to know.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Morris, and I am the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Fargo. I have been in this position about 10 years now. I work closely with Steve and the Liquor Control Board in advising and interpreting the ordinances and working with the police department in violations and status and presentation of those violations to the board for consideration of action. So I'm actively involved with this board, and I have brought along with me the city prosecutor today, who will also be introducing himself, Will Wisher, but he is going to be working with me in assisting you in your role as the Liquor Control Board members. So thank you.
As Nancy said, my name is William Wisher. I'm employed by Eric Johnson. I've been working in the prosecutor's office for 3 years now. This is my first time being a part of the Liquor Control Board, so I look forward to working with all of you.
Good morning, Grant Larson, Director of Environmental Health. Been in this position since 2013 and was on the Liquor Control Board before you guys have the new formation or membership. So I look forward to working with you on environmental health related issues specific for restaurant and alcohol licenses in our food establishments.
Morning, Chief Cebulski from the Police Department. For our part, we'll be bringing forward to the board issues related to licensed establishments for which we've been sent or have identified, in which either referrals were made to the city or state prosecutor on other situations relative to police involvement in these licensed premise locations.
Good morning. I'm Larry Annenson, Director of Health Protection and Promotion at Fargo Cass Public Health.
Good morning. My name is Preston Niesmeyer with Fargo Cass Public Health, and I coordinate the server training program for the city, as well as help coordinate the compliance checks.
Hi, I'm Jill Pagel. I work for Steve in the Auditor's Office with licensing.
Again, I want to express my appreciation for your volunteering for this position also. I think that you're going to find it interesting, challenging at times, but this is a well-needed change in our liquor license process. So at the dais, there are two things there. There's this binder that we're going to go through today. And then underneath that or close by, you'll also find the agenda that we have for next week's meeting. I will say, since this is broadcast, we'll mention this a number of times, but in the past, Liquor Control has met on the third Wednesday of the month at 1:30. For this meeting, we had some conflicts with staff, and so we reached out to you, and everybody was agreeable to meet on Tuesday, the third Tuesday this time. And that meeting is going to be at 1 o'clock. This room is scheduled for other meetings afterwards, and so instead of 1:30, it's going to be at 1, and instead of Wednesday, it's going to be on Tuesday. We will be looking for your input on what days and times do work best. And, part of the difficulty is scheduling with this room, and it gets quite full at times. So with that, in your binder, you're going to find, the Liquor Control Board members, which is, your own names, obviously, and then city contacts, people that you can reach out to at the city. We have both their email and their direct phone lines, if you'll find those helpful. The first item that I've been asked to cover here is a summary of the liquor license application process. And I'm not going to go through and read this, but on the backside of that employee roster, there's a history of the liquor licenses in Fargo. I was able at one time to track back the origin to the Liquor Control Board to about like 1962 or 63, somewhere in there. And at that time, the mayor, there was a question that was on in front of the city commission, and he said, I'd really like someone to look at this and to research it. And he appointed the city attorney, the city auditor, himself, one commissioner, and I'm missing, and the police chief, to form a subcommittee to review a question that was in front of the city commission at the time. And really that body then later would meet at on an as needed basis and continue to do that. When I started in 2000, it was still meeting on kind of an as needed basis, but going into the future, we quickly determined that this needed to be something that was meeting on a regular basis, and so we established a regular meeting time. And so we move forward with that. A number of the licenses, we've been accused of having alphabet soup, that type of thing. But what you typically find is that, a businessman will come with an idea or a thought or something like that, and it doesn't fit in our current structure or that type of thing. And so the city has always been responsive to the businesses, and so we try to accommodate where we can, as long as there isn't another license structure that would all would take care of what they need, I guess. One of the first licenses beyond just the basic on sale and off sale was a Class F license, which was a food license. Our old city attorney, Gary Stewart, may he rest in peace, Gary used to call that the Phil Wong license. So if you remember Phil Wong's, he was the first one to say, I'd like to have alcohol to be able to serve with our meals. And so the F license was created. A little later on in 1990, we had Chili's and Fridays kind of come to town. They were the first licenses that they wanted to have a bar area as a seating area, just as a holding area while they were preparing tables and that type of thing. And so we created the FA, and I consider that like the food alcohol license, FA. And so then, we move forward and we've created a number of different licenses over time. So when somebody comes to the city and they tell us that they would like to get an alcohol license, one of the first things we try to do is get a feel for what it is that they want to operate. Is this business that they're thinking of? Is it something that, is it a restaurant or is it a bar? What exactly is it? And then we try to find the license that fits what they're looking for. And then we help them with that process. We have an application that gets filled out and gets submitted, and then we route that application to police, fire, building inspections, and health department, as well as auditors. And everybody signs off on that, and then it comes back with the police department does a background check and a review of the license application, and it'll come back with a recommendation, either approval or denial. And so then we bring that forward to this body, to the Liquor Control Board. And then the final step in issuing a liquor license is to have a public hearing in front of the city commission. So that's kind of the process that we go through with a new license application. Are there any questions on that at all? How that works? Okay. So the next section really is talking about the different types of licenses, and this is where it can get a little bit confusing. So in the binder, there is like a chart or a graph about 3 or 4 pages back, and it lists all the different license classifications and what they can sell, whether it's spirits, beer, and wine, whether it's sold on sale or off sale, if a bar is allowed, and whether or not their food is a requirement. And then it has the fee structure in there. And then if there's a cap, a limit on the number of licenses, that's listed on that too, on that chart. And it goes on to say some more things about, if it's like a club license or something like that, examples of what the clubs would be, that type of thing. Then the next page talks about licenses with food requirements and then licenses without food requirements. So when I look at the license structure, I look at basically 2 categories. Well, I start with 2 categories. Are we going to have food or no food? And if it's food, it's a restaurant, and then that drives us down a certain path of licenses. If it's a non-food, where food isn't a requirement of that license, then it kind of drives us down the other path. And then the other factor is whether it's on sale or off sale. So example of licenses with food is, as I mentioned, the F license, the Phil Wong license, if you will, which is the food sales must exceed the alcohol sales, but a physical bar is not allowed in an F license. With the F license, they can have full alcohol. They can have the spirits, beer, and wine. The next license in that classification then is the FA. And really the difference between the F and the FA is that the FA allows a bar. So if you give an example, Mexican Village downtown is an F license. You can get any kind of drink you want, but it's delivered at your table. There's no bar. Mexican Village on 45th has the physical bar. So the downtown license is an F and the license on 45th is an FA. So that's kind of the difference between those. Back in the, I guess Mayor Furness was the mayor. Downtown Fargo was a different looking place than it is right now in the late 90s. And Mayor Furness said, we need something to generate some energy and some excitement and some activity. And he suggested that we create a license for the Renaissance Zone, basically the downtown area, that would be less expensive than that traditional FA license. And so we did an FA license with an RZ, Renaissance Zone, attached to it. And then that license had a smaller issuance fee. So some of the examples of that have been issued are Toasted Frog, Vinyl Taco, some of those kind of establishments in the downtown area, and they're able to have the full alcohol. We had some other kind of takeoffs of the FA license. FA Entertainment is one where instead of adding the food sales requirement, it has an entertainment. So most of the revenue has to come from the entertainment side. So the one license that is currently issued that is like that is the billiards hall on 32nd. But in your packet for next week, we actually have 2 more of those applications. One is for a bowling center, and the other is for a golf center. So just to kind of keep that in mind as we move forward with that. And we start moving away from full alcohol. We have the G and the H. G is wine and H is beer. And then a lot of times people will combine those together and have the GH together. I is similar, but it doesn't, it allows a bar, it's beer and wine, has food sales, but it doesn't allow the spirits. And we talked about FA Entertainment. I Entertainment is the same as FA Entertainment, except it doesn't allow spirits. And then we have one, which is the Sanctuary. It's the RZV, Renaissance Zone Venue, and that is the Sanctuary. We have production licenses, which are a domestic distillery, winery, or breweries. And with those licenses, we pretty much just follow what the state says as far as what they can and can't do. When we flip to the next page, we start in the licenses that do not have a food sale requirement. So these are your, you'd think of them as a street bar, something like that. Don't have to have food, although nowadays you'll see most places, most establishments do have food. So an A is an on sale, no off sale is allowed. And then the B is off sale. And then we have some licenses that are allowed to have both on and off sale, and they're the A and B, AB. We also have a club designation where if you're a club that's been in existence for 20 years and have 200 members, you can get this club license, and it doesn't have any food sales to it requirements. Or if you're like a fraternal organization, or for the veterans organizations, they can be in existence less than 20 years if it's a newly formed veterans organization. We talk about the Z license and the B limited. The Z is the same license as the A, with the exception that the Z has a tie to population. So as population increases, we increase the number of licenses available. And the same with the B and the B limited. They're both off-sale licenses. And as population increases, the number of licenses available will increase with the B limited. Then we have some hotel licenses. The ABH is for the full service hotel. So you think of like a Holiday Inn where they can have a physical bar. The ABH Limited is one where they allow the hotel to have like a manager special, that type of thing, where they're not so much selling the alcohol as they are having a giveaway kind of thing. So they still have to have all the requirements of server training and all of that. So I guess the two other licenses that we have, a number of them issued, are the C and the W. Those are beer. C is beer, and it's on sale with no food requirement, and it allows them to have a bar. And then the W is the wine license that has no food sale requirement, and they can have a bar. And some of the businesses that have gotten the C also get the W, so they get them together. CW is the license that's issued. So you can see it can get kind of complex. So if you have any questions on what you're seeing, or why a certain license or certain classification is issued, feel free to ask. We can kind of walk you through exactly what why it is the way it is. One of the things that you will see occasionally is somebody comes up with an idea that doesn't fit in what we have, and when we do that, that's when we try to decide, well, is this something that's worthy of a new license classification being created? And what we would do is, if this board feels like that's something that's worthy, we would go to the city commission and seek approval from the city commission to direct the city attorney to create the license, and we would go through that process. There is a request on the agenda that you'll see for next week that actually will cover that. And again, one of the first things we always ask is there a way, a license class that, that they can already do this with, and what are the restrictions, or why can't they do that? So, and we will cover that next week when we get there. We do have a copy of the application that we use in there. And, it shows some of the background information that we ask. We also ask for some information on what your business model is, and then a business site plan. I feel like I've rambled enough for right now. So I'm going to pass it on to Chief Zabalski. And if you have any questions, I think this is a kind of a free flow thing. So, if you have a question or something, go ahead and stop us and ask the questions as we move through.
Steve, I have a quick question for
Yes,
you. How does the transfer of licenses, who can transfer licenses for events and all that? How does that work?
Well, there's a couple of things that I'm hearing there. One is asking about events and that type of thing. And so if we have an event that somebody wants to have alcohol at, you think of somebody that has like a beer garden or something like that. We have a license that's called an E-license, an E-permit. And we're able to issue that without going through the board or going to the city commission. So applicants, licensees will apply, and let's say they want to go to a wedding, have a wedding up at the Air Museum or something like that. They can go to a licensee, and the licensee can apply with that E-permit to take their license off premise for that defined period of time, and then have that event. So that's one thing. The other thing that I heard you ask was license transfer, and so licenses issued after 14. Thank you. After 2014, no licenses are able to be transferred unless it's as a going concern. And so you actually, in your agenda packet, we have 9 licenses that we're going to look at. Some are new issue, and there are a few that are transfers. The transfers are all as a going concern. The way the ordinance is written, licenses issued before that time, the license still has the value so that they can transfer the physical license itself. So recently, Old Chicago closed, and they found somebody to buy that license, so they were able to recover some of their initial investment. Now, had Old Chicago been opened after 2014, then that wouldn't have been an option for them. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Oh, there it goes. I have a question.
Sure.
Could you elaborate a bit on the gaming, what it means when there's a blank next to gaming? I see there are some no's, but some yeses as well. So for the category of whether gaming is allowed, does that, if it's blank, does that indicate that it's just not addressed, or is it treated on a case-by-case basis, or is it no gaming?
So the ones that say no, it's specific in there that no gaming is allowed. The blank ones would be yeses. And I'm not sure, I guess the 2 that say yes down there, the golf and the entertainment, could be blank also. It's the same thing.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thanks, Steve. And I guess I have a question, and this is for long-term. I think it'd be interesting to know how many liquor licenses we have per capita compared to other large towns in North Dakota, but also cities our size in our region. So I'm thinking, Sioux Falls, Lincoln, and that's a long-range request, I guess, but I just think for our information, I think that'd be a good thing to get, and that's a long-term request. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't have that answer right away, but you have to be kind of careful how you ask that question, because we have over 200 liquor licenses that are issued. Some of those licenses, though, you wouldn't think of Nicole's Fine Pastry as a place that you're going just to drink or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think maybe a more pertinent question is how many licenses that are considered bars, that type of thing. If you're looking at saturation, if that's what your goal is. So, is that, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. From the application perspective, the police department gets the packet from Mr. Sprague, and then we review a number of things as required by City Ordinance 2515. One of them includes a criminal history background check to ensure that the person is not a convicted felon or convicted of other offenses that may prohibit them or not enable them to operate a facility selling liquor appropriately. I think in your packet here, in this, I don't know what page number, but I guess if we looked under tab, guidelines, penalties, you'll see, and that would be the second page, attachment A, where some of those application guidelines are outlined. So by ordinance, these are the things that we look at when we look at the applicant's packet from a criminal history perspective, as well as there's some oversight in terms of bankruptcy, that type of thing from a business management perspective that we would get in that background packet. As long as they have met all of those parameters, we would normally then approve that packet. That goes back to Mr. Sprague, and then whatever additional steps are needed for that to be done, and then it comes to the committee for your approval of the issuance of the license, transfer of licensee, renewals, that kind of thing. We are in the midst of doing some fine tuning with the city attorney in terms of the criminal history backgrounds. That process is going to change a bit from what it traditionally was because it's required by law or ordinance to be done a little bit differently so that we can make sure that we're doing our due diligence. When you receive the packet, you'll know that all of these things have been checked. Any questions on the police department's part of the application process?
Chief, I have a question on the background check. Where is that a national background check that occurs?
It needs to be a national background check to be in compliance with the ordinance. We have found that unfortunately that wasn't being done in all cases because of some rule and legal requirements. So that's the process that we're working with Nancy Morris on, and we will come up with a solution to ensure that we do have a national check so that we know when we present this to you that we've been able to verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, I have a quick question in terms of the application process. After someone has their license and one of these violations would occur, is there then a revocation process, or how does it work if they later violate one of these items?
Well, if you go a couple more pages to 2 and 3, there's a list of violations, but I think that I might ask Nancy to comment on, because I think this is an issue as we bring things before you, what are your options? Some of it's laid out here, but I'm not as familiar with it as she may be, and I think that's a good discussion piece. Do you mind commenting on that?
Happy to comment. So if you're asking if there is a violation that would otherwise be in the guidelines for the application, at this time, those have not been brought forward and they weren't checked at renewals, but that is going to start happening as well. So there will be at renewal time, if there have been a violation that would have prevented them from obtaining the license in the first place, there will be a review of that application renewal process. Now, if you're asking about if there is a violation that is specific to the license, that is set out in the table that is after the resolution for the guidelines. And what that does is identifies things that would be a violation of the license, like allowing a minor into the facility, over serving, those kinds of things. And they're all set out in the ordinance as a first offense, second offense, et cetera, and it ultimately could result in revocation of the license.
Does that sufficiently answer your question, sir? Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. And then in terms of our monthly reports, we'll be bringing forward contacts that we've had. I guess we would follow this penalty schedule. I think there might be more discussion about that as well with the city attorney, but this is how it stands currently in terms of, I guess, the ability to take action on a license. And so you will get a form, basically a form with the basic information and the violation, and then I or someone from the PD would be here to provide any additional background. So obviously, in those cases, there's more investigation and more information, some of which may be we may be able to talk about publicly, and some we may not because it might be connected to other investigations. So to the extent we can fill in some of those gaps, then we're happy to do that. I think that's all I have, unless there's questions. Thank you. Okay.
I have one more question, Chief. Sorry. So you talk about that we would receive information on the number of incidents that occurred within or violations that occurred with a specific business. Is there, since the health department keeps track of server training and those sorts of things, is there a way that your information and the health department's information could be merged into one file so that we could look at the big picture?
Well, I guess that's something we could explore. Yeah, I would say that in general, our information is often segregated for a variety of reasons. But the form that you get on the violations will be just basically a one-sheet summary. So that won't be a lot of information. It won't be as thick as that application packet. And then we'll provide some context to that. And then I guess you'll go from there on decisions. But we could certainly explore trying to merge that information.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning once again, and thank you for your service on this board. There again, this wasn't, give you a couple items I wasn't previously included in your folder, including my business card. I see on the list of contacts in page 1, Steve holds me in grand regard because my name's listed as Grand Larson, not to be confused with Grant, but thank you. Anyhow, now you have my business card. Feel free to call me at any time with any questions. I'm just gonna go over real quickly the process, how we get involved. And it's separated from Steve's licensing. So for the health department, what I did was I gave you 3 things here. The first handout is the commercial building plan review guide. And that's actually listed on the City of Fargo building inspections. And so I just took a screenshot and I printed this out for you. But if you go underneath the website, you can get more detail there. But what I want to point out is that I work in concert with the building inspections and the fire department, and make sure that they have what they need to be complied with for a certificate of occupancy before we would say on this board, yes, the facility is good to go. So you'll have a number of new facilities or remodeled facilities. And a lot of times, unless our requirements are met, we don't give the check and approve that certificate of occupancy. So that's what one of the things we'll try to do is, make sure that nothing moves forward with your vote unless it's complied with the other city entities under that process, if that makes sense. The second hand I gave you is just our food license application. We have different categories too, so you can see the schedule license fees and the type of license fees, and on the back side it has the food definition. So basically, if you have 3 tiers, a tier 1 would be like a convenience store that don't have alcohol licenses usually. Tier 2 would be like your fast food restaurant, and then a tier 3. And it's based on category of risk based on the FDA food code. But I point that out because a lot of times what you'll have, just so your reference, tier 3s are the ones that are going to have your alcohol licenses embedded in them, whether it's a bar or a non-bar, like kind of Steve pointed out. But we have an alcohol license, so my folks and my team will go in there and inspect the food aspect of it, as well as the alcohol license for the health department. But that's all that's checking for is, are they wearing gloves when they cut the lemons and limes? Are they cleaning the glasses properly, the silverware, and are they doing that? We're not going in there to look for over-serving. We're not going in there to check their books to see if they've had 50% of food. That's not my job. So that's why I leave it up to the chief and Steve on those. So I stay in my lane, but we do these, and we make sure that we go in there and check for their alcohol compliance as far as sanitation aspects. And then the third one I just gave you, I thought it'd be some good information, how the state looks at, or how the state application process works. You know, and basically it says that anybody that sells retail alcoholic beverages must be licensed to the Attorney General. So this is, you know, I won't read it verbatim, but it's another way of checks and balances, because if there's a new facility, and what they'll do is they'll go to Steve and they'll go through our process, and they'll get issued a temporary license distribution number through the state. And that'll be a temporary license until it becomes, you know, whole or permanent, after they talk to me and they confirm through the Attorney General that, yep, that facility is good to go. So the Attorney General contact me or somebody from my team, and we'll go, yep, that new facility meets all our requirements, go ahead and issue that permanently. That way they can order that liquor and their beer and everything through their vendors. So that's just another way of checks and balances for the state to make sure that they're complying with local requirements and stipulations. That's all I have for you, but pending any questions I can take, be happy to answer. You bet. Thank you.
There will be a test at the end of this. It will be an open book test, fortunately, but it's very overwhelming. So I appreciate it, and just to keep. I've been on liquor control for a long time, and this is overwhelming to me. So I appreciate sticking with us. Thank you.
Good morning. So my name is Preston Niesemeyer, and I work for FargoCast Public Health. And my role with this is going to be with server training as well as compliance checks. So I'm just going to give you a brief history of that, how server training goes, and a little history on the alcohol compliance checks, as our 2020 data and some up-to-date 2021 data that we've had so far. So just a little background, server training was brought to you here in the early 2000s, and it was implemented by the Traffic Safety Task Force. And originally this attendance was voluntary, and it was implemented because of poor compliance check results and some concerns by citizens and law enforcement. So this was part of a law enforcement efforts to build a relationship between the two entities as well. FargoCast Public Health assumed responsibility for this administration of this program in September of 2001, and then this mandatory server training ordinance passed in Fargo in the early 2000s. So in Fargo, as well as some other communities surrounding us, this is the only program that is accepted, and not any other online or in-person classes across the state. So server training is nice because this gives the servers and bartenders or bouncers, if they're there, it gives them an interactive experience with experienced law enforcement. Currently, we have about 4 Fargo Police Department officers that teach the course, as well as a sergeant from Moorhead. This helps to detect and deter the underage purchase or consumption of alcohol, and it helps the teachers, servers, how to intervene with those intoxicated persons that they'll come across, and how to deal with the proper procedure when they see an underage person attempting to purchase alcohol. And as part of this program, when we have the in-person classes, when we're at full capacity, or when we had less COVID restrictions, but now we're seeing it, we do have fake IDs that the servers can look at, and the officers will explain what to look for, and that's also part of the PowerPoint presentation. These classes can be taken virtually, online through an online renewal process, and it's a less expensive that way. It's $5 if they renew within that 3-year period, as long as their card's not expired, or it's an additional $20. Businesses can also set up private classes. We see this not so much with like your standard restaurants, but this time of the year, like the Fargo Dome, we'll do a lot of private classes, as well as Red River Valley Fair, because they're getting a lot of volunteers and they can them all in one shot. And for a private class, that's $195, so it helps they save money doing that way instead of paying for 30, 60 people to go through a class. Generally, our classes are going to be held 3 times a month with some flexibility to add classes there. Certainly during a liquor license renewal, that's when we're going to see influx of people registering for classes. So we always add classes that way. The virtual class, that's new to us since COVID. And in that class, we can have up to 250 people in it, and they can do it from their homes, and which is really nice for people who work in 2 jobs or they're a stay-at-home parent, that they can get the information that they would see normally in an in-person class, but they get to do it at the comfort of their home. And then the website there is just myservertraining.org to register or call. So here's just some data on the 2020. We had 36-person classes held. Generally, you'll see a higher number than this, but due to COVID, we had to reduce the number of in-person classes. We shut down in-person classes for a while, and that's why we saw an increased number of people called online learners. So for COVID, the online renewal course, we just opened it up for everyone so they can keep current with their server training and not go past their expiration. We had 5 private classes, and then last year, approximately 82.5% of servers were current with their server training from the rosters that were given in July, with about 72 businesses where over 80% of their staff trained. So far in 2021, these numbers are up to date as of last week, given the rosters that we were given in the past month. We had about 986 servers trained through 10 virtual classes, 9 in person, and 3 private courses, as well as a handful of online renewals. And then with that, about 48 people actually took advantage of the online renewal course. And we're going to be coming out with a new format for that in fall 2021. Right now, they get emails through like a third party that we contract with, and we're going to go away with that and then just do something with our officers here in Fargo and send them a link and quiz them. But which is kind of encouraging, or very encouraging, if you looked at the previous numbers of last year, around 82.5% of servers were currently server trained. And as of this year, so far, we have about 91.5% are current with their server training, or they have registered for a class in June. We have a couple classes in June yet to do, but with the businesses that were fairly low on compliance of having their server trained, Jill sent out letters and we requested them to actually email back their roster and send the dates that their employees are signed up for classes. And then I went in and verified that they actually registered for a class, just to put a little more pressure on them. So this is also 2020 data, and I won't read through all these evaluations since you have the information with you, but this is how you want to see how well received the class is. So like on the first, to me, on the third pie chart here, it says, to me, the content of the server training is about right. You see about 74% agreed, that strongly agree, and another 23.7% agree with that. So they're giving the information that they want, and it's a very cool experience, and we invite you guys, if you guys want to go see a class, just to let me know, we can get you in. So just some more information here. Let's see, the class taught me how to identify minors trying to purchase alcohol. So if you combine those two there, you're going to see about 96% either strongly agree or agree that the class helped them identify minors how to purchase alcohol. And the ID checking procedure I learned in this class was very helpful. You see another almost 96%, or a little over that, strongly agree or agree with that. Another part of the class is we have ID checking guides, and we encourage all establishments to actually purchase their own. But the ID checking guide will go through all the 50 states as well as Canada or other like passports to see what they look for the holograms or identifying features so they can't see the fakes. But some of the fakes now are so good that they actually scan. So you can, if I had a fake ID, it would bring up all my information. So going on to a little bit more of here, This class has taught me some of the important intervention techniques for intoxicated customers. Another strong showing there with 593 people in agreement or an end of that. And then the class emphasized the importance of monitoring customers for intoxication before every sale. So this goes into making sure that you're not over-serving people. And then one other reason why our class is required here, because we go over both North Dakota law and Minnesota law. As you can see that the servers and bartenders and bouncers who've taken this course also strongly agree that this is very helpful. And this is just some on the instructor and how well they do between the local departments, police departments in their area that do teach the course, and they do a wonderful job. So these are some comments that we saw in 2020, and we'll do another round of these after 2021 to give you more accurate data how 2021 is going. We'll probably have a little less evaluations, because most of these 2020 evaluations, they were done by pen and paper. And in 2021, with COVID-19, we introduced they do it online, and you just don't get it for them all the time because they're not pen and paper right in front of their face. But they're saying the instructor was very informative and not being monotone, very interactive, and made sure none of us fell asleep. This was a great course. The officer is great, and they learned a lot. And the instructor made the presentation easy to follow, along with, because it also provided examples and advice on a certain issue or problem if we ever came across them. So they also teach in this course, intervention techniques, IDs. They'll go over dram shop laws and how to and tricks to look for in the fake IDs for minors, and what they should do if they teach that minor, little hints on it for how minors actually try to get around purchasing alcohol. And it's about a 2-hour course given or take on the instructor. So compliance checks, these checks were established to prevent youth access to alcohol and deter underage drinking. Minnesota and North Dakota allows a person under 21 to enter bars or liquor stores as long as they're supervised for a compliance check, and that is in our city ordinance. Businesses can be checked up to 4 times a year or more for a business if a failure occurs. For the minors, they're not going to be disguised to look older. Their appearance is not altered, and they must present their valid ID when they go into the checks. If they ask if the bartender asks this is a compliance check, we instruct them, the minor to say, yep, this is a compliance check. We don't want them to have any way that we're trying to trick them into failing. The bartender server is penalized for serving even if the bouncer or the door didn't card. The last checks we did were on March 29th of this year. During these checks, we checked 13 businesses, and 12 of them passed, resulting in a 92% compliance rate. On these checks, it may look like there was a few checked, but a handful of businesses, when we're out there, they may not be open to 6 or 7 o'clock. So they attempt to make a check, but the business is closed. And how we select businesses for our program is we have an algorithm that was written to us by City of Fargo that coded it, and it picks establishments by their most recent tests. So if an establishment hasn't been checked for 6 months, 7 months or so, they may get bumped up to the top of the list and make sure they get checked on the next round. Or if a business fails, no matter what, when we do a compliance check, they're going to get checked again to make sure they made the corrective issue. And then these are some of the Fargo compliance check penalties. They're quite lengthy. The first offense, this is really tied into with server training. So this is a $500 penalty and this penalty may be waived if the person serving the alcoholic beverage, as well as management, have current server training certificates. So the server training will be required within 30 days for any employee or member of management not currently server training. And this one, there's going to be no license sanction on the first offense. The server will still have a penalty, but that'll waive onto the business that $500 if those 2 people are current for server training. And then the second offense is a $750 penalty. And then you see there's third offense, fourth offense, fifth, sixth, and so on. On the 7th offense, there's going to be no monetary penalty, and there will be a revocation of a liquor license, and the other ones here, it's a suspension throughout their liquor license on them if they fail. Does anyone have any questions with server training or compliance checks? And here's just some of my contact information that's in your packet as well. But we're very pleased how everything's going with server training and how the increase has been going over the previous year, even the times that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon me, I have two questions.
Yeah.
Who typically pays for the training? Is it the employee or the employer?
Typically, an employee pays the training. Actually, very few businesses actually do pay for it. But it's generally the $20 on the employee.
Once you get certified, is it transferable between different businesses?
Yep, so that card is transferable for 3 years no matter what in Fargo. If a server comes from like Grand Forks, they have a different system than us. So if they come from Grand Forks, they'll take a one through a different entity. And if they come to Fargo with that server training card, they're required to take the City of Fargo one. But instead of dinging them for that $20, we allow them just to take it in person for a $5 rate instead of that $20.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, one more question. You mentioned that if a business has failed one of these compliance checks, they might get bumped up for a sooner compliance check. Is there a minimum number of checks that a business can get? Like, are there businesses that haven't been checked in years because they've done quite well in the past?
So with compliance checks and that, we want to start performing more of them. There have been some businesses probably haven't been checked in a while. But with how the algorithm works now, if they haven't been, now since how this system works, that won't be an issue because those ones who get missed or they were closed when we checked them, if we go out again, they're going to be at the top of the list, as well as those businesses that had a previous fail, that failed the last compliance check.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So welcome again. My name is Nancy Morris, Assistant City Attorney, and I just want to thank you again for your time and dedication to the City of Fargo. This is a newly formed committee, and so there are some changes taking place. The former members are now staffing you. So the hope is that you will have the information that you need to make recommendations to the City Commission, and that communication will be open and transparent. So, like I said, I'm here to assist you and to assist the staff members that will staff this committee. I'm also bringing on board William Wisher, our city prosecutor. This Liquor Control Board, in the change and the revisions and the information, has been, we've been making a lot of changes to the ordinances and really engaged as a city attorney's office. And so we're hoping to provide additional support to this committee as we move forward. So thank you again. My role today is short and sweet, but one that is very important, and that is to discuss open records and open meetings. You are now a committee that has been appointed by the mayor of the City of Fargo, and you are subject to the open meetings and open records laws of the state of North Dakota and federal as well. So I want to call that to your attention because oftentimes we don't realize what is an open record and what is a meeting that would be subject to the open meeting laws. So let me start with my background on this. I started this position 10 years ago, and I was on the Board of Governors of the State Bar Association, working with an old newspaper man by the name of Jack McDonald. And he told me when I started this job, assume it's open. And as a newspaper man, I took that to heart, that they will ask for documents and they want to know what is happening with public funds. And so again, I caution you, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So really what we're looking at is the government entities are governed by North Dakota Century Code sections 4404-18 through 4404-19.2. And that discusses both open meetings, when you can have closed sessions, and what are open records and how are they assembled. So North Dakota has very, very broad open records laws. There are things that could otherwise be viewed as confidential. Maybe, I don't know if I can make specifics, but personnel records are not necessarily confidential in North Dakota, where they are in many, many other jurisdictions. So keeping in mind that we have very broad open records laws, your emails, your communications, your writings, all of that are subject to open records. So again, I would caution that just keep in mind that it's an open record, and not that you shouldn't engage in communications, particularly with staff, but not with each other. So if you get an email or a notice or something that comes from staff, don't do a reply all necessarily. It is that then could be viewed as a meeting, and that request would be made. So let's talk a little bit about what those open meetings are. Again, the intention here is to provide as much transparency for the business that you are conducting for the public and using those public funds. So if you get an email and you do a reply all, or you're polling, or you're tallying votes, or doing any of that, that's a meeting. Every meeting that has a quorum of the members must be noticed, have an agenda, must provide the minutes, and must be, the media is sent that publication, as well as others. So again, if there is a quorum of members making a decision that's related to public business, that is an open meeting, and it must be conducted in open session. So again, I just caution you, emails, replies, those kinds of things could result in an open meeting violation. So we're as a committee of the mayor, that applies to your emails and your communications as well. With that, do you have any questions for me about open meetings, open records?
Is a quorum for this group 3?
It is.
Thank you.
Any other questions or anything that, okay, my contact information is also in the front, and feel free to give me a call with any questions, comments, concerns. Again, this is a new process, and we hope to get to you the information that you need to make that recommendation for final decision by the City Commission. So again, thank you for your service.
Well, we're going to finish just about on time, I think. So we're doing well here. So there's 2 tabs left in the back of the book. Section 2515 of the Fargo Municipal Code is the section of the municipal code that is governing our alcohol licensing. And then the final tab is North Dakota Century Code Section 5, and that is the North Dakota law that governs the alcohol licensing. As I mentioned earlier, you do have your agenda packet for next week's meeting, which will be on Tuesday in this room at 1 o'clock. So as we go through this process, if there's something that you would like to see in addition to what's in there, please let us know, and we'll certainly include that going forward. Or if there's something that you say, well, I just don't think that we need this at all, something like that. We're open to making the agenda packets what you need. And so the final thing is, you have them this time. So be thinking about how you would like to receive those going forward. If you want them in a hard copy like that, or if some kind of a scanned image or something like that works better for you, we can accommodate either way. As I mentioned at the beginning, in an individual conversation, if you're unable to attend a meeting, please let us know in advance, and we have the ability to phone in or to join online, using the computer and that type of thing. I guess that's all we have at this time. If you have any questions, I know staff is still here. Sometimes people don't want to ask the questions right up front, but want to thank everybody for coming today, and we'll see you all next Tuesday.
Can I add real quick? I just want to thank the staff, Steve, and well, everybody that worked on it. In the past, we did not have this 3-ring binder with all this great information. And so it was a group effort to have this. And I think it's a great thing. And we're planning on doing that with the other committees too. I think it's just it'll be a good resource. And to me, don't be afraid to call. We have experts on all these, and I know you're going to have lots of questions. I have lots of questions, and that's what they're there for, to be our resource. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be very challenging. And so thank you all for agreeing to serve and looking forward to it. Anything else from anybody in the group? Very good.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.